I think we are, good afternoon, everyone that is here. We will get started on our fourth session. And we have the opportunity to meet with Dan Jones and Kelly Haney on the Warriors Circle of Honor. And to start this out, I would like to have the jury introduce themselves. Pardon? We fought for our country is the name of the proposal. And if you would introduce yourselves, Edwin, would you start, please?
Good afternoon. I'm Edwin Fountain. I'm General Counsel of the American Battle Monuments Commission, which designs, builds, and maintains American military cemeteries and memorials around the world. I'm also Vice Chair of the U.S. World War I Centennial Commission, which is in the process of establishing a National World War I Memorial here in Washington.
Good afternoon. I'm Johnetta Betch Cole. I served as the director of the National Museum of African Art here at the Smithsonian for 8 years. And now it's my great honor to be a part of this jury.
Good afternoon. I am Stephanie Birdwell, and I'm the director of the Department of Veterans Affairs, Office of Tribal Government Relations here in Washington, D.C. I'm also a member of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, and very honored to be part of this jury and looking forward to your presentation.
Good afternoon. I'm Herman Viola. I'm Curator Emeritus at the Smithsonian, and I am the Senior Advisor to the Memorial Project. Thank you.
Tashalak, good afternoon. My name is Brian McCormick. I'm an enrolled member of the Nez Perce tribe. I live in Idaho, and I am a landscape architect.
Good afternoon. My name is Lawrence Larry Abakana. I'm originally from northern Alaska, Inupiaq, and I'm an artist, sculptor, and a glass artist.
Welcome. I'm Lillian Pitt from Warm Springs, Oregon, and am an artist, and it's a pleasure to be here and listen to your words. Thank you.
Aloha mai kako, kavika make, kanaka maoli, Native Hawaiian. My ohana comes from Ka'awaloa Kona, Hema on the island of Hawaii, and extends all the way to Kealia, Kauai. I'm an environmental planner by day or by trade, and a traditional cultural practitioner in the art of hula, of chant, of music composition, and poetry. Mahalo.
And sitting up here in the shadows, Kevin Gower. Wave, Kevin, please. The Executive Director of NMAI, and also an alternate juror for the project. It's a great pleasure that we welcome you here today, and look forward to learning from you more about your thoughts about what this project is about. And we also, you have to realize that he's brought his cheering section back here with family and friends that are with him, so that's great. Good, so I'll turn it over to you, Dan and Kelly.
I'm going to begin, and then Kelly will follow me. We're the sons of Oklahoma, Kelly Haney and Dan Jones, better known as SaSuWeh by my Ponca people. We'd just like to thank everybody that was involved in this really important project. We'd certainly like to thank the jurors for bringing your expertise and certainly your time to this design competition. Many of you, like us, of course, either served or, have family that have served, family members. And it's these brave men and women that we're here to do this. We've all been shaped by their character. We've all been influenced by the people that have been in the military in our families. It's because of them that we are here to create this monument in their honor, and in our hope that our design will further the recognition, the honor, and the respect for the veterans from this project. We submit to you today the design we call We Fought for Our Country. We're prepared to demonstrate through this presentation that we feel that we have the enthusiasm, that we have the concept, and the energy to do this most important presentation. We've been through several evolutions of our design since we've started. In the stage 1 submission, we started with a hexagonal shape, and it also had a base platform on it. We lost the base platform, and we added some features. We've made this changes to a cylindrical design. We've also removed the platform. We've made it more accessible to the handicapped so that they could use it. I want to thank the Smithsonian for helping us to be aware of these needs. We've made sure that we've had meetings with Native American veterans, and they've actually added a few, the gathering circle and a bronze hand that we call the healing hand, but I'll get more into that as we go on into this. The material is, the monument will stand at 22 feet. It's constructed of bronze and marble. In most monuments, the reason we put the woman and child on top, in most monuments you see, it's the warrior they put on top. But from our culture, we chose to place what we felt that the warriors fight for on top, their country and their future generations. We felt that we placed the warriors around under them, who we call the guardians, who risk their lives to protect these most important. I'll certainly get into this more, but we use strong symbolic gestures to show exactly what we get into this presentation. But we want to speak to future generations, and we want our piece to be a healing form also to the people of now. Next, I'd like to briefly discuss our design in each of these elements as we go, and the design principles that we use based on the dozen or so design principles. The memorial portrays the message through interpretive elements and materials. We use bronze and stone together to make a timeless memorial that expresses its meaning through many levels of symbolism here. We Fought for Our Country encompasses many design elements. Atop of the memorial stands nature and the future. Sitting just between nature and the future are the guardians. And then below the guardians are bronze and scenes from our plaques depicting the various acts of valor. We can get more into the detail on the plaques. And seated between them are the healing circle and the gathering circle and the healing hand. The final element is the stone itself, and I'll certainly get into more of these as we go. We Fought for Our Country memorial creates an enduring monument to the past, present, and future veterans and their families. Like the stone and bronze that make it up, it is designed to stand in the test of time in both physical material, spiritual, and emotional symbolism. Native Americans fought in every war in the history of the United States and have displayed a very strong cultural commitment to serve their country. We show this commitment to protect their homeland, community, family, and traditional ways of life in several powerful ways in the memorial. First, we have atop the woman and the child. The woman and the child represents nature and the future. The guardians are the United States military, in the United States military jackets surround the woman and the child. We also show that the Native American commitment in the stones that they're actually walking over here, these come from boarding schools. It's been practically 90% of all American Indians were taken from boarding schools that went from a period of like 1925 to 1966 joined the military through the boarding school process. So we thought it was very important to include that era of our history. These sacrifices and Native American commitments are a legacy to American cultures. The memorial reflects our spirituality so that all visitors will see the embodiment of the memorial in its space. We show nature holding a healing feather in one hand, and the other is a fire coming out of her hand. The child has a bundle on its back, and that bundle represents the tools of her spirituality. Nature is using the healing feather to passing spiritual energy for the child's endurance. The memorial sits atop a circle of pavers. The circle is a symbol important to Native Americans since time immemorial. People can gather around the monument with adequate space to pray or perform spiritual ceremonies. The memorial is designed to embody the sacrifices that the family that stay behind have for their soldier. This element would represent the family member of the tribe who send the soldier off to war with prayer and ceremony. They pray for them while they're in the service, and then they receive them back with prayer. We believe this is a very important aspect of American Indians as soldiers that is a very healing part of it. For VALOR, we're using these 5 branches of the military. Each branch has a different headdress. Of course, the headdress is a symbol of courage to all tribes. The headdresses come from the 8, go back one. The headdresses come from the 8 regions of the United States, so we're inclusive of all of America in those regions, Alaska, and one of the headdresses also represents Hawaii. So, the memorial will act a place of healing and consolation for all. It's a space designed to allow those who wish to heal, pray, or contemplate ample room to do so. It also improves the traffic flow around, and I'll get more into that. These are some. We intend to use NFC tags that will be on signage around the memorial. These tags don't require any kind of batteries or anything. There's very little that you have to do to the memorial. It'll stand from now on with very little to do. So the tags themselves, you can get any amount of information that'll be in this museum if you want to research a certain war that American Indians have played a part in, from the earliest part till the most recent, or any branch of the service. It'll be available through these tags. So we can go into great detail. In balance, the memorial placement provided a balance between a sense of enclosure and dignity with an openness and visibility, inviting a place to explore. But we do this by building a retaining wall that fits into the street on the Jefferson. So we've actually are opening a brand new entrance into the museum. We feel that a lot of people have been trampling through the grounds to get in, and so our whole monument actually opens a completely new entrance into the MANI and MAI. So our memorial is integrated seamlessly within the landscape. we recognize the current interrelations in the landscape building and the grounds. We do this by incorporating the same materials into our monument that the NMAI is made up of. So we use we use a column, and the museum itself is a series of columns if you look at it. So it fits right in seamlessly within the museum and the grounds, but it's a little different because it sets itself apart by its message. Okay. Well, one problem that we solve, of course, is the entrance itself. That this gives you a really nice view of, in order to get to the entrance, you have to go all the way around. We decided by making a new entrance, it would be much easier to give a straight shot to the opening here. So, finally, that shows the flow of traffic currently, and then the cow trails are people walking through, trampling through the flora and fauna. So finally, this will also, we believe, will create one of the most photo opportunity places that we can see, because in our opening, we'll give you the most clear shot of seeing the entrance to the museum. And we believe in the future that if we're picked, that this will become really an ideal spot for people to be able to take a photograph and actually remember this here. We feel we're building a legacy here, a timeless legacy. It's a powerful, iconic memorial that will certainly withstand the test of time. Well, in closing, we hope that we have succeeded in helping you see the depth and the meaning of our design and our commitment to this amazing memorial. It is our belief that we must not only build a site that honors the past, but one that tells a story through its meaning and symbolism that will educate and inspire future generations. We think our design accomplishes this. We appreciate your consideration. I'd like to ask Kelly to give you some words here.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. All right. My name is Enoch Kelly Haney. I'm a full-blood Creek Seminole Indian from Oklahoma. I'm the first full-blood Native ever elected to the Oklahoma legislature. Became a senator eventually and was head of the Appropriations Committee, so I did quite well in the legislature, where I was able to pass a bill which is now involved in a $180 million cultural center in Oklahoma City. So we're in that process, and I think it's going to be done. The money's come in, so we're all ready to go. So I've been at this kind of thing for a very long time. My name, Enoch Kelly Haney, that doesn't sound Indian at all. Neither does Dan Jones. But I remember I was going. I wanted to have an Indian name, and I had different Indian names given to me when I was young, and one was Ahalakochokne. Well, what that means is a short, fat, sweet potato. So I didn't think that was very proper, elegant for an Indian artist. So one day I was going through I don't know if you know what wild onions are, but back home we love wild onions and eggs. And I was going through the line, and there were elderly ladies who always liked to tease me anyway. And she stopped me and asked me, Nakcho Jifkade, which means, what is your name? I told them, Enoch. No, I said, Kelly. Said, no, your other name. I said, Enoch. Said, she smiled and said, I know how you got that name. I said, well, how's that? She said, when the doctor delivered you, he looked at you and said, Enoch there. Well, what that means in our language is, what is it? So, so I just kind of quit. I just kind of quit asking for an Indian name and just go by Enoch Kelly Haney. And for those of you we meet again somewhere down the line for one reason or another, I go by Kelly. I want to really thank you for doing what thousands and thousands of Native people and others have wanted in this in Washington, D.C., and that's a memory of Native American veterans. While I was in peacetime in the military, my two brothers went, but I remember after World War II, I had many people come to me and they would sit in front of my house there and a little fire, and they'd be telling stories about the war, that my dad was in World War II, and all his friends from the church. They sat around and talked about the war, and they just laugh. Of course, at that time, you can laugh about things, not there, but and so I really got interested in this whole concept. I've been a painter most of my life. I did a painting called Forgotten Warrior, which I painted of a warrior touching the wall over here, Vietnam Wall, touching the names. Well, I took all of the names that I could find of Native people who died in Vietnam and put it on that wall. And then I've done others. One, probably the most popular one I did was called Standing Guard. And what that was, it was you look at it half this side, it's a soldier in Vietnam. All the clothing was correct and all that. But on this other side, had darkish color too, but it's a native with this native regalia on. And the people who recognize that right off the bat are veterans who most people didn't get, but a veteran could see it from a distance and it just kind of walks that way. And so I was very pleased to do that. So I've been carrying this concept with me for a very long time. And as I've been here to Washington many, many times in different capacities, I would go by and think, well, it's past time. It's not about time. It's past time for us to do what you're doing today. So I'm very pleased and honored. And I know I speak for many of my colleagues who are heading different tribes and their tribal people for the work that you have done to bring this to fruition. There's only a couple points I want to make. For those who don't know me, I have exhibited throughout the world. Vienna, Austria, Singapore, England, and other places in the world. So I have the experience of exhibiting in different places in the world. The second thing is, when I got to be, I had in mind that when I was 95, I was going to be a full-time sculptor and stop painting. I pretty much did that, except I missed it one year. I was 56. And the reason I chose that year was because of Alan Hauser. Alan was 55, from what I understand, when he started sculpting. So I thought, well, I'll just try that. I knew Alan very well. And that's what I've been doing. One of my biggest sculpture, most prominent one right now, is a 22-foot bronze sculpture that's on top of the Oklahoma State Capitol Dome. And it was I was really pushed on time, but we got it done from start to finish in 10 months, which is really, really fast. But, you give me a task to do, and whatever that task is, give me a time frame on it, and we'll get it done. So there are two things here. One is that both Dan and I, and Dan is also a former chairperson for the Ponca tribe, and I was former chief of the Seminoles. And so between he and I, there's two things to remember. Number one, we have experience, and we know how to get things done. Number two, we understand Native people. If you understand that, we understand Native people. 80% of the language I heard growing up was Muskogee. English was tough, but I finally got through that too. And doing the things that I did, we went through it. And having built a cultural center now, that's going to be done in 3 years. We think that's a great tribute to what we do. And but I didn't run for the legislature because I was Indian. I didn't do that. I ran because I thought I was the best person to be the representative and eventually the senator from my district. Because my dad used to tell me, son, if you're going to do good for people, you have to do good for all people. And that's hard sometimes, but then that's what I understand about life, and that's what I do. So the things that I'm doing right now and the work that I do, I appreciate. I love this concept of the woman on top of the sculpture. I love it because the woman for us is Mother Earth. You can't get more holy than that. That's Mother Earth. That's where we get that's how we get to breathe and live out our life. And and she has a fire in her hand. It's the mystery of that spiritual understanding. And then the one in front of her is a little child that some tribes use to lead a grand entry because the child is going out and checking to make sure there are no enemies out there. I don't know why they use a young girl, but they did. And so they did that, and that's what was there. And that concept in itself is two things, is passing on of the spiritual values of Native people coming from Mother Earth, but it also talks about the young child who will carry her people in another generation, another time, forward with their culture. And I think that's really important. I've had, as several of you, maybe not all, but I was born before Pearl Harbor was bombed, is the way I put it. And so I've been through a lot and seen a lot from my own people who participated, and some of the people from Seminole people were actually code talkers. I used to listen to them out there and so forth. So I've had a real strong attachment to this concept for a long time. There's two things I will let you know about it, and I'll conclude. Number one, we have this skill. I'm getting ready to send a 10-foot sculpture to to China right now, and I sold some work in China. So we have the skill to do, and the size doesn't matter. You tell me a size and what you want, and I'll get it done. And the second thing is that we understand Native living, Native tribes. We understand our dances. We understand those things are important to Native people because we have lived it, and we continue to live it. And with that, I'm going to conclude and, again, give you a great big thank you for your help in doing what you're doing. God bless.
Thank you, Dan, Kelly. As usual, very, very thoughtful, very, very inspiring, very, very committed to the idea. I would like to turn it over to the jury for any kind of comments or questions or statements. Herman?
Herman Viola, and I think this is really quite a remarkable design and would be a nice fitting monument to American Indians and a memorial, but I'm concerned about the coloration. How do you think that's going to hold up, having the patina that you have on there? Because I think we'd be concerned here about upkeep, and would you feel it would be okay to do it without the patina
Excuse me,
on
could
it?
you talk into the mic closer, please?
Okay. The question is, you have these statues patinaed, colored, and how would it work if you didn't color it? Would you be comfortable with that? Because I think it would be very hard to maintain that coloration with all the traffic, all the dust and everything that comes through here in DC.
Yeah, it fades about 10 years. It'll start developing. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. After about 10 years, it starts developing its own patina. And at that point, you can do two things. You can either, refinish the piece, or you can allow it to go into its own. And those works, as far as I'm concerned, are just as beautiful as, a modern piece that was made and colored.
It's pretty easy to do. Basically, you go out there and you wash it down with soap and water and put wax back over. It could live as much as 15 to 20 years before it's ready.
Okay, thank you.
You introduced yourselves as sons of Oklahoma. Having listened to this presentation and certainly given an enormous amount of attention to your artistry, I would like to describe you respectfully as the soul of Oklahoma. This has been a very moving presentation, one which clearly comes out of your profound understanding of and personal experience as Native people. But what strikes me as an African American woman is that so much of what you have presented resonates so strongly with me as well. And so I'm sensing the specificity of Indian culture and the universality of human experience. As someone who's had the honor of heading a museum and living in the world of the visual arts, it's with great trepidation that I ask of you to consider doing something to your design.
I'm
That
sorry.
is
What
because,
was that comment?
I'm
What was
sorry,
that comment?
I will say it again. I said because I am a former museum director and I live in the world of visual artists, it's with a certain amount of hesitation that I ask you to consider doing something to your artistry, to your concept. And it is this. When I look at the Guardians, I immediately am struck by seeing only half of their bodies. And I want to be able not to be distracted by that, but to relate to what I heard you describe this afternoon. Is my question clear?
It is to me. They're spirits. They're the spirit. They're timeless. Maybe I should have gone a little more into that in my part of the presentation, but they're meant to be spirits. They're meant to be, the concept actually came from the Black Leggin Society that they use on the, you use as a promo to the, when you made this call for this competition. Where they put, somebody had put their uniform out on a hanger and then they put the war bonnet over it. And it's not only visually striking, it also carries, to me as an artist, it hit me like, well, he's recreating, you know, the spiritual power of that entity. So that's good, you got that. So that's really what they represent. There's no faces, you know, the faces are gone. The headdress to me was the most important because that is a region, you know. There are, by anthropologists, there are 8 different regions in the United States of American Indians, but that boils down to about 6 different headdresses cover all 8 regions because the war bonnet, of course, is used in more than one region. So it worked out quite well that we could use 6 headdresses. There's the 3 other sides, of course, are different headdresses. So there's 6 different headdresses all around it. And to me, that was the most important. That's like these nations have fought and have through time, and these spirit guardians that wearing these military uniforms. This has gone through time and will go through time. Whoever we started with, we could have put like some from World War I or some from further back to how they might have dressed in the Revolutionary War. We just picked a time, and I think that that's something we would like to be in consultation with the Smithsonian about. What might be the best time to take period that we should pick these from, that if not just the present, so that it would be more timeless. But the full intention is that no, there's not one human there, there's not one person there. This is the spirit of those soldiers, that no matter what time that they come from. I hope that helps, but yeah.
Were you going to take it home with you, John Adam?
I was so impressed by the response, I was holding onto the microphone.
A couple questions. The guardians, are they executed in full, in relief? How do they attach to the stone?
Full.
The images, they sort of float, and so it's not clear how they...
Yeah, they do kind of float, but they're full standing sculptures. They may have a piece of the back removed so that they fit onto the round surface of the base itself. But pretty much full. There's a step in that you can't see that steps in that accommodates some of the war bonnets are longer in the back. So there's a step in on the piece that is there.
I guess you might call it relief sculpture. It's about half relief sculpture.
Okay.
Is what it is. The woman on top is
Full standing.
full
Right.
Yeah.
woman and child.
Yeah.
And then for the relief panels, what direction do you anticipate heading in terms of what imagery, what themes, what those depict?
The one on the bottom with the,
No, the panels.
Six panels.
oh, okay. 6 panels are under each of the soldiers or the uniforms.
They will encompass a time. That's where we can get into the detail. We wanted this to have multi-meaning. From when you see it from a great distance, it's Indian, it looks Indian, and as you start to get closer and closer, it's like, oh, this is Indian and military. And then as you get closer and closer, these details start coming more and more until you're right up on it. Now you're looking at the plaques themselves are scenes of exact history that we can do. That, again, is something we wanted to work with the experts because, I mean, I'm certainly not qualified to know the best. One example I often use is George Washington when he was here, when he went across the Potomac, when, at Valley Forge, if it wasn't for the Oneida Indian Nation bringing him 300 bushels of corn, we may well be Canadians today. I think that's a perfect example worthy of the plaques. I think one would be the amount, no count on how many medals, but the amount of, variety or the congressional medal that, they've won all of these and the bravery, the valor has been. Certainly the code talkers would qualify to have with their own plaque. There's 2 groups of those that are the most famous. And we've promised one to women. In our meetings with the Indian veterans, we ask them one of the questions, we only have one uniform that's of a woman. Is that enough? And the veteran was shrewd enough to say, well, if we get a plaque. So we did want to. But that, again, I think that's something we really need to sit down with the experts to totally develop each of those, scenes. And built on what I'm telling you from the history, the length, and the detail that we can get in using those. It's not hard. I could do it myself here, but I would, this is so important, and it needs to be completely right.
Thank you.
So, aloha mai kako again, Kavika Makeg. I really appreciate everything you folks share, especially from your na'au, from your intuitive sense of being. I can resonate with that.
Oh.
As taught to me by my elders, my kupuna, that knew of my hopeful contributions to this stellar group here. The resonating key message was, sort of as a Native Hawaiian, maybe with Native Alaskans, we're sort of geographically the outliers. And so sometimes I feel we're just sort of put into the group of all natives. And so the conversation that was placed upon me was make sure that our narrative, our story is not forgotten or hidden. So I do appreciate the attempt in the paneling that you do speak to the Kanaka Maoli experience, the Native Hawaiian experience. So with that context in mind, it's a comment, and please don't take it as a criticism per se. I'm coming from a place to pai, they say, to support. But I think if this were to be selected, there may need to be some more dialogue, specifically within the Native Hawaiian community, with veterans and cultural practitioners. Just on, for example, the illustration of what I would call mixed media of cultural exposition. So you have the mahi ole, which is our headdress.
Yes.
As I understand it, and the way it was taught to me, the mahi ole is actually more of social rank related to our ali'i. Yeah, so the ali'i from different areas would wear that, signifying their status and role in the community in traditional times. Often our ali'i would engage in warfare. So just to be clear, at least from a Hawaiian perspective here, that it's not necessarily a war headdress, but more of a social hierarchy status placed upon the ali'i by which some of them were charged with battle. So that's one comment. And then the other would be simply, at least in some of our traditions, for example, in today's society, if you're wearing military uniform, and I totally understand that these represent spirits, but in the case of when you wear a military uniform, I guess the only appropriate, and I say appropriate from a cultural perspective rather than a military perspective, is the use of a le'a'i or a le around the neck, regardless if it's flower, seed, shell, what have you. So if you're introducing the concept of a traditional regalia onto the uniform, there might be some mixed signals and sort of maybe mixed appreciation for what you're trying to do. Yep. So with that being said, there may need to be more talk story with our Native Hawaiian community if this were to move forward. That was it, thank you.
If we're so fortunate, I can assure you that we will definitely seek consultation of your people. Yeah.
I want to say it's difficult when you're given the task of trying to represent all the Indian tribes in America, and we're talking 565 tribes. It's awfully hard, and even Oklahoma is 39 tribes. When I did the sculpture for the state of Oklahoma, which is 29 feet, they asked for they asked for a, quote, generic Indian. I said, what the hell is a generic Indian, you know? I never heard. But I picked a time and place before the European to create that warrior, as he would have been back there to represent. So that turned out quite well. It was simple and direct, and you ever come to Oklahoma, come by.
I can't speak for other, but what you said is also true in many Native American and war bonnet culture. There's certain war bonnets that mean certain things. That could be, like you said, status of, the one status, not necessarily in the military order, but just his status in the tribe, But generally they'll let you know if it's, for the military, you'll see like feathers have been decorated like red, for instance, the times they've been wounded or something. So you know the military. The headdresses are all different, yeah.
Hi, my name is Brian. I guess I'm going to put my landscape architect hat on right now, because you guys are changing and adding a whole other entry into the site. Can you describe more what the plaza and the walkway will be, how that will look? I mean, will there be seating and lighting? And you even talked about some other interpretive sign that would talk about the technology. I'd like to hear more about what you envision around the actual monument.
Yeah, this place is in the round. I don't know if I have a specific slide that, I better not mess with this thing. Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, it's the exact same pavers we intend to use of the no? There, okay. Yeah, there it is. Exact same pavers, extension of the wall that already exists in front. It's just an extension of that. And there's benches on the side. It's a very expensive proposition, but we wanted to make sure that it matched exactly. The ballards will be exactly the same as the ballards that are in front of the other entrances. So we're just basically copying the entrances that exist and opening a new one. Pavers are the same, ballards are the same, the trash cans are the same. We want them to look not different at all. That's the intention. There was some, the ground lines we took, it doesn't really, there's two big cisterns there that are just south of where we're at. So we kind of had to move it to fit in there without, affecting those. So we could keep the grade right. So there's a retaining wall on Jefferson Street across the top. We're gonna bring a hole in there, use the pavers, the same pavers we use. This actually doesn't show, but the pavers would go all the way out into the street like these others do. So, and then the ballards would be at the front, just like it shows in the, there, the same ballards. So that it's just a continuation of the other entrances. Right now, they really do have a problem of people cutting through. They climb over the wall and they cut through the pass. And their cow trails they're basically inventing there. I think there may have been, without speaking with the director specifically, I think there may have been a problem of people utilizing those or talk of another entrance as well. Did I answer any of your question?
Yeah, I just think that, this one actually has some opportunity of, as far as the site design to do, to do some, because you're gonna have another perspective of the wetland, from that pathway, and you might actually even get closer to it, depending on how you guys end up designing that entry.
Where we're right at the path behind this is like the intake of an overflow of the wetland itself. So we're real careful to stay on this side of it, so we're not impacting the wetland. And where we're mainly going through, we noticed a lot of trees were cut in that area now anyway. So we're not really sure what was going on and why that was done, but it looked to us like an opportune place to be able to move a new opening through.
Yeah, and it's gonna have a different feel, because it's gonna be the one side where you feel like you're walking through the forest instead of walking beside it, so.
Yeah.
It's an interesting concept.
We thought it does, but the main thing that it actually does is it puts it facing the mall. That this is not an artifact of the National Museum of the American Indian by the same mandate by Congress that mandated this is the same that mandated the National Museum of the American Indian. This carries the same weight as the museum, that it was mandated by Congress. And we felt if it was put inside, that it would just appear to be that it was a piece of the museum. Well, we want it to look like the museum and resemble it, but we also want people to know this is something of its own. And then once you get into it, you'll see that it quite readily see, yes, this is a national memorial. And it faces the mall. That's why we wanted it to open that area, really.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about facing the mall, do you think of this in terms of having a front or a back? Thinking about what direction do you have the woman and child striding? Where do you put the healing hand? Do you conceive of this as having a front side, a back side? Is it facing one direction or another? How do you look at it in those terms?
Currently, she's facing east, which is, you go ahead.
For most Native people, not all, but most Native people, we face east when we prepare medicine and sing our medicine songs for your medicine. We face east. That's not true with all the tribes, but that's what we do. So east is really important to many of the tribes in Oklahoma where we come from. And so that's, in fact, whenever I put the sculpture on top of the Capitol, the first calls from Native elders was, "Hey, Kelly, which way is he standing?" Mm-hmm. I mean, that was the question. I said, well, he's standing east, but he's looking south. And so that's kind of the way we fixed it so far. Let me explain the other thing, too, is there's a section there that you required is something healing. Well, the fire to us, healing, and that's one thing. I mean, that's the way we talk to the Creator, is through the fire. And but it also, one of the things, one of our veterans, he was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam as a Chickasaw. He retired as a full colonel, and he said, Kelly said, when the Native people are helping one another to feel good, as they like to touch one another. And so that's why we put the hand in there. The hand is symbolic, and that's we want them to touch that. For the millions of people who come through here, we want them to touch that because that's a hand of healing.
There's also the gathering circle in the bottom is an opening, and that is for the warrior who's left and for him to come home.
As it's been said, most Native warriors who came back from Vietnam particularly, and other wars, World War II and others, that we have less problems with mental problems coming back from wars like that than most other people. Because number one, as was said earlier, when you go to war, we sing for you and offer blessings for you. And when you're in wartime situation, we pray for you, you know, at that time. And when you come home, we have a big fast and dance for those who went away. So Native people, generally speaking, are treated very special once they go to war, and I think that's important.
Thank you, Kelly. I think that's a good way to end the session. I have enjoyed so much working with you and learning from you as we've gone through this.
Don,
Oh, we do? I'm sorry, Lillian. Please.
I have a question. I know the guardians are spirits, but when I look at it, they look like, they don't look like spirits. And then when they're cut in half and the images are so close to their body, I'm disconnected as to what you're trying to say. So will you help me with that?
She's concerned that because
No,
we cut the
yeah.
soldiers in half, that they're disconnected, that the panels underneath them are connected to them.
I'm a little confused.
Yeah. Well, that's been brought to our attention to move them, to actually move the panels between them and not under them, where they don't, you know, like this panel is supposed to go with this figure and move them, and we just haven't done it. But we're going to do a test model and, you know, and work on these particular, you know, particular things.
That's been one of my questions, quite frankly. And when you're an artist and you're working on something, you have questions. I don't think I've ever finished a piece of artwork, you know, but with that in my mind, what I'm looking at is composition. I'm a trained artist, and I was in design company and had a design company. And so when I look at something like this, I'm also looking at the composition. And I think that's what you're referring to.
Yep.
And so we're still kind of looking at that some.
Does that help at all?
Yeah, it sure does.
That there's been other people question, and including ourselves, and we a lot of times as artists, both of us, you know, there's many different schools of that, and I have to say that we try to get it done, and it didn't get done in this. This has been pretty grueling, this whole thing, actually, for us, and expensive too.
You did a good job. You really did. Thank you.
Yeah.
I will say my final words is that if we were just doing the art part, we could do it real easy and real fast. But all of the requirements that help us to get here, getting this number, getting that permission, and it's something I normally don't do with any of my projects. They tell me how big and how, when they want it, and I take it from there. But this has been part of the test.
Yeah.
Well, we realize that, and we wanted to get your interpretations of this problem. So we put out an envelope out there for you to fill, and as you did, and you did it very, very well. We thank you so much for helping us understand really what the memorial could be, what the Veterans Memorial could be, how it relates to the museum, and how it relates to the overall mall. Appreciate it very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.